Well, welcome to the Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm Dr. Anna Wasescha, president of Middlesex Community College, located right here in Middletown, Connecticut. And today my guests are Christine Witkowski and Kim O'Rourke. And Christine teaches environmental science here, runs our environmental science program, and is a huge champion for sensitivity to the environment and all different kinds of aspects. And Kim is the recycling coordinator for the city of Middletown. Yay for the mixed stream recycling, right? Because everybody should be recycling now.
Yep, it does help, right?
And hooray for the company that I pay, because they gave me a recycling bin the same size as my garbage pail, or whatever they call those. And ultimately, in the end, the garbage receptacle should be smaller than the recycling.
That's the goal.
That's the goal,
yes.
Yeah. We'll get there. That's good. At least now we have parity between the two. So we're here today to talk about a film that's going to be shown on April 3rd, which is coming up really quickly. And I'll let them tell us all about it, and then we'll talk about recycling in general, and Earth Day coming up, and all the other good things that April is associated with. So, Christine, why don't you tell us about the movie?
Sure. This is a part of a series of environmental films called The Elements. It's an annual environmental film series, and we show a total of 4 films per year. We alternate between Wesleyan and Middlesex Community College. And this is a partnership of several organizations, including Middlesex, our environmental science program, the Connecticut River Coastal Conservation District, the Rockfall Foundation, and also Wesleyan's Center for the Arts and College of the Environment. So it's quite a nice partnership. And we work together to select films each year. And one of the goals that we have is to try to find films that are uplifting in the end, because so many of the environmental problems we're facing are, very serious, and many of the documentaries that are produced are very depressing. And a lot of the people who come to these films already kind of know what the problems are, and we're really ready for, okay, what do we do about it? And we try to address that by also having discussions after the film and talk about how can we make changes. But this film coming up, Racing to Zero, is a particularly good one in that it really gives us a hopeful look at how we can reduce our waste. And this is showing what San Francisco is doing to achieve zero waste. And we feel that this film is definitely in the spirit of what we're trying to do as far as showing examples of where people are doing things right and how they can be examples to others.
So I'm really curious to see it myself. So it's the 3 R's, right? It's reduce, reuse, recycle. Mm-hmm. So it's not just recycling. I'm sure that's...
absolutely right.
Yeah, right.
Recycling is the last R that we want to accomplish, actually. Right. We rather reduce and reuse first, and then recycle last.
And so this film is looking at reducing waste?
This film is looking at all different aspects of diverting waste and reducing waste, yes. So it shows a great path of how to reduce the waste stream. And it's kind of inspiring because Middletown does have a resolution for zero waste, and we are slowly at the beginning of the path of zero waste. But San Francisco has come a long way, and they're really moving forward. And some of the programs that they've done, it's interesting to see because we'll be looking to replicate many of them.
Let's tell me about them. I'm curious to hear.
Yep. So the interesting thing in this film is that many of the programs we do here in Connecticut, we do in Middletown, but we're at the very initial stages of it, and they've taken it to the next level. So for instance, with recycling, one thing I love about San Francisco, and I think a lot of California does this actually, is that they have 3 waste streams. So they have their garbage pails, they have their recycling pails, and they have compost pails.
Right.
So that's huge because organics is a large part of the food waste that we are not capturing here in Connecticut.
So let me interrupt you to say that we have to take a break.
Okay.
It's one of the most annoying features of this radio show. When we come back, let's talk about composting waste. So, also near and dear to my heart. So we'll be right back after this message. Well, welcome back to the Middlesex Moments radio show. My guests today, Christine Witkowski and Kim O'Rourke. And right before we broke for the break, how do you like that? We were talking about composting. Is composting organic material? So just first of all, what is that? What does that mean?
So that could be food waste or like grass clippings or anything that grew, basically. Leaves, small twigs. What they do is they give you a cart, just like your garbage cart, and you can put your yard debris in there and then your food waste as well. And then they'll take it to a facility where it'll get composted. Here in Connecticut, we're not quite there yet. I mean, we do have different ways to compost. Some people compost in their backyard with a compost bin, and we've been encouraging that for years, right? So there are a couple facilities. One is actually operating, and another one, both in Southington, is going to be coming online in, I think, a year or two. And they'll be able to take large amounts of compost. So there are different options. I think if you're composting at home, you want to make sure that you have some brown material, which is what they call, the leaves would be, it's carbon rich. So the leaves would be brown material or wood chips or sawdust, something like that, in with your green material, which would be your food waste. So we do sell compost bins through the city sometimes, and it's important that people new to composting know that. Sometimes they don't read the pamphlet, or we didn't get the information to them, and they start composting with just their food waste, and it smells and it's really wet, and it's like, oh wait, you're supposed to put leaves in there too. So that's very important. But when you put it in a container like San Francisco does, and they take it away to a large facility, it's different. You don't have to worry about those ratios so much.
Do they show you the large facilities? I'm always curious, is it an anaerobic digester?
The one they have on the film is an anaerobic digester that they go through. Yeah, it's kind of interesting
And
to
what
see.
does it look like?
So, I mean, it just looks like a kind of a factory. The conveyor belts and big buildings and...
Does it look like a winery? Does it have these giant steel canisters? How do you make it anaerobic?
Well, it is all enclosed. Yeah, it is all enclosed. I don't remember seeing like the large canisters.
Yeah. Well, I'm just curious because in the end, after a successful digestion, then the material that comes out is useful as...
It depends on the type of digestion they do.
Okay.
So, because I believe the one that's operating in Southington now does not come out with an end product. It turns it to energy.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. But I think the one that's being built will have both, some end product and mostly energy, though. So there's different types.
So, Christine, what does that mean, energy? To heat? Or what is the energy they produce?
Yeah, you can use it to produce electricity. The heat that's generated, you can use it in a number of ways. I don't know exactly how they're doing it in Connecticut, to tell you the truth. I don't know how they're set up, if it's going to feed into the grid or what. So we'd have to look into that to be sure. And maybe it's something we could talk about at the film, after the film.
So you not only could have solar panels, you could have wind turbines, but you could have an anaerobic digester that would feed electricity back at. That's zero. That's fantastic. Zero waste. Yeah. And
you can capture the heat and use that, like combined heat and power. I don't know if that's something that they're doing, but there's a lot of different ways to do that.
Yeah. So this is really an example where where science is so important. I'm on a science campaign these days. I'm going to go to Washington, D.C. for the Science March on Earth Day. But we need to have research to help us figure that out. And it's at some point in the recent past, some researchers said, hey, you can turn your eggshells into electricity, which is incredible. Yeah. So it's not, to reduce, reuse, and recycle is not really to, live the life of a monk where you have to, there's no pleasure involved and there's no real manifestation of the good suffering that you don't have to suffer, right, to do this. Anyway.
Right. No. Yeah. It can be pretty convenient. You don't have to suffer. It can be part of your life, the way you live.
It does take an adjustment.
It can take an adjustment.
Yeah, you have to, change your habits, and once you do that, it's not hard.
Right.
Like bringing bags to the store. I still have the salespeople always trying to give me a bag. I'll say no bag, and they're handing me a bag. No bag.
Well, that's a question about Middletown and the plastic bag ban. Is there that ever a discussion here?
Well, it's funny that you say that. There hasn't been a discussion on that, although members of the Recycling Council have recently asked to put that on the agenda to discuss. There is a big program in Connecticut to educate people about recycling plastic film, the Connecticut WRAP program you might have heard of. So they're working to get people to bring their plastic film back to different retailers.
Is their plastic film a plastic bag?
Yes.
Okay.
So, but they want to make sure
it's camera film.
They want to no, not old camera. Okay. We're hoping there's not that much of that left.
Yeah, there shouldn't be, right? So,
but there might be. So it's more like it's the plastic bags for sure, but also like bubble wrap or the plastic encasing that goes around paper towels or toilet paper.
Or the plastic, like when you move and they wrap the plastic around
shrink
your
wrap.
furniture.
Sure.
I was
Yes.
mortified when the mover started whipping out this plastic film and putting it around all my furniture. But fortunately, you can recycle all of
So
that.
right, and dry cleaning bags. So anything like that, there's now a big effort to educate people how to recycle it. And they had a big kickoff here in Middletown at Price Chopper.
Okay.
So they have a container at Price Chopper where you can bring it to, and they'll backhaul it back to the companies to turn into like park benches or plastic lumber, that sort of thing, Trex material that people might be familiar with, the decking.
Seems like grocery stores are kind of good partners in this, right? Because they do other work like that, where they'll have bins for bringing clothing, for example, drop off
true.
of that. And,
Yep. They are great partners for that, and I know they're reaching out to try to get more of the grocery stores to do it, and really any store that generates it. But I think that's their goal. If they're generating it, and bags are the big thing, but then why not bring it back there and have them ship it back? So that's kind of the idea of it. And the folks running this Connecticut WRAP program, that's kind of their goal, is to have this voluntary program to encourage people to bring it back, in hopes that there isn't a mandatory ban on plastic bags. Yeah. So
what other initiatives
That's
are coming
where
up
we are.
on that commission's agenda?
So what else are we working on? They meet the last Monday of every month. And I mean, we're working on a lot of things locally, and some of it, similar to what people will see in the film. We do, we're trying to encourage more textile recycling. That's a big part of getting to zero waste, is to encourage people. Amazingly, people throw clothes in the garbage. And there's some great outlets for recycling.
What are
Textiles.
those?
So in Middletown, you have your Goodwill, you have your Salvation Army, any kind of donation center like that. And people probably don't realize, but definitely Goodwill and Salvation Army, they'll take any type of clothing, even if it has a hole in it, even if it's stained, because they have they'll separate it out. They'll sell what's sellable, but then they will recycle and get money for what's not sellable in their store. And they'll work with a textile recycler to turn it into new thread for a new product. So that's kind of cool. But people don't realize that. If they have a hole in their sock, they just throw it out. But it makes a huge difference, because it's profitable for them to do that. Same with sneakers. We used to have a program with Nike to recycle sneakers, but unfortunately Nike discontinued it. But you can bring sneakers. You can bring one shoe. If you just have one shoe and you can't find the other one, you can bring that back, and they'll take it and be able to
Bring it back to the Goodwill?
Goodwill, yeah.
And Salvation Army?
Yeah. We also have, Woodrow Wilson Middle School has a container for textile donations, and they use it. It's kind of a similar type of program, but we work with a textile recycler. They collect, it can be backpacks, it can be pillows, it can be blankets, clothing, any textile type of material that's not mildewy or wet, basically, or oil, doesn't have oil on it. Then they get paid for that material, and it goes to the recycling program there. So it's a great way for them to generate some revenue for their program.
Yeah.
And some cities and towns are accepting them as a regular part of the waste. Like in my town, Glastonbury, we can bring textiles to the transfer station. But that's not true here in Middletown?
No, we have that as
you
well.
do? Okay.
Yeah. We have, probably most towns have a drop.
Yeah.
And I think that might be the difference is, there has to be a way to get people to bring it back. And it's still easier for people just to put it in their garbage.
Sure.
So in San Francisco, they have a system where you're actually paying for what you dispose. So there's an incentive not to put a lot in that garbage.
We get that little thing down to a tiny little can,
Right,
and have the other bins be much larger.
Yeah. And that's one of my goals in City Hall, is to change the garbage cans to little tiny cans and have big recycling bins and compost containers, and try to reduce the amount of garbage actually coming out of there.
Yeah. Well, baby steps. I mean, there are the electrical plug-ins now down in the parking lots by City Hall for electric cars. It just takes time.
Right.
So we have to take another break, and when we come back, let's talk about being self-aware about the waste we produce, right? And we can talk about the audit that we've done several years running now here at the college. So we'll be right back after this message. Well, we're back to the final segment of the Middlesex Moments radio show and the larger topic of zero waste and on the film Racing to Zero, which is going to come to town on April 3rd, which is a Monday. It'll be here at Middlesex Community College. The airing of the film is at 7 p.m., but at 6:30, folks are warmly invited to gather in the pavilion, which is in Founders Hall, and bring something to eat and hang around and talk and learn more and more about the whole concept of zero waste. And we'll repeat that again so that we make sure you all remember, and that there's plenty of free parking. It's easy to get to Middlesex, and we'd love to have you here for this movie. But I wanted to ask Christine about the audit we've done of our own waste, because as Kim has been talking, I was thinking the old saw that the Oracle of Delphi said, which was know thyself, and kind of need to know thy waste, right? And
Right.
because I had never thought about pillows and blankets, so I'm learning a lot in this conversation. So know thyself. So what do we know about our waste from the college campus?
Well, it's very interesting. We've been doing waste audits now we've done 4 of them, 1 per year. We always do it during Earth Week, and we do these audits in conjunction with the environmental science class, the Introduction to Environmental Science. And the students in that class participate in the waste audit, much to their dismay. I'm not sure that they're all thrilled about it, because a waste audit involves putting on gloves and sorting through the trash and recycling and weighing all of the different components. And some of the students are very enthusiastic, and they just dive in and they are very excited about it and feel that they learn a lot from it. It is a very educational process. I do have some students who go off and collect trash around campus. It's an alternative. So not everybody ends up doing the sorting, but we've done this 4 years running, and we have another one coming up this Earth Week, April 17th on Monday. Anyone is welcome to come help us. So if there's anyone out there who wants to come see what we're doing and learn about this process, it starts at 11 a.m. and they can contact me if they're interested. What we do is we have the maintenance staff the night before, they collect the trash and recycling from all of the buildings and label the bags as to where they came from, so we know exactly which building is which. And the different buildings on campus have different purposes, so the trash makeup varies. So Founders Hall on campus has the cafeteria, so that's where we see the predominant food waste. And so the issues are different in different buildings. And what we found as we've done this from year to year is that our recycling rate is actually very good relative to the state average. So the state average is somewhere in the high 20s, if I remember correctly. And we're hovering around 44%, 45% recycling. So there is some trash mixed in with that recycling, and we'd have to subtract that out. So it's probably a little bit lower than that, but we're over 40% recycling. So that's something to be proud of.
So that's against the base. So of 100% of what you dispose of, 40 to 44% is recyclable.
Yes. Yep.
So are you finding things that could be recycled?
Yes. So
Okay.
that's the actual amount that we do recycle, so that people correctly place into the recycle bin. So that's somewhere on the 40% mark. There is a certain percentage of the trash that could have been recycled, and that tends to be somewhere around 10 to 15% on average. And so if we added that in, if we actually had recycled that, our recycling rate would be higher. So that's an area for improvement. We do need to do some more education around what can go into recycling, and in some cases it's probably just a thoughtlessness on somebody's just hurrying to class and they just toss it and don't think about it. So I'm not sure how we address it, but it's a relatively small percentage of the trash, which is encouraging. But the bigger problem for us is that 20 to 30% of our trash could have been composted if there was a way to do that. There's a lot of food that gets thrown away. So that's something that a lot of institutions struggle with, and there's no easy solution. I know that Wesleyan has worked on this problem, and it's been difficult for them, even with the amount of staff that they have that can help divert some of that food waste in the cafeteria setting. So there's a lot of challenges, but that's an area for us to focus on going forward.
And something that Middletown will help us with going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the food waste is something we have to capture. We have to separate, and we have to capture if we're gonna even try to get anywhere near zero waste. And I say zero waste in quotes, because the idea of zero waste is to get the smallest amount of waste as you can. It doesn't have to be zero, it's okay. But the food waste is huge, and now that we're starting to have options in Connecticut to do something with it. I mean, before we didn't have a facility in Southington, which is still kind of far away, and it'll still be expensive to deliver it there. You would have to truck the food waste to Ellington or New Milford, which really is just really expensive. It just throws it out. You can't consider it because it is so expensive.
You start to think about the carbon that is produced by trucking things.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, you haven't really made headway.
Right. But if we do want to, the organics is such a huge part of the waste stream that we are really not capturing now. So Middletown is seriously looking at that and trying to come up with options to help residents and businesses and institutions to have a better plan for it.
Yeah, I'm sure that every community has, I'm confident that every community's got eaters, so we're all producing this organic waste just as a byproduct of being human beings and needing some nutrition. But Middletown has got such a high density of restaurants. I would think that kind of industrial users, so restaurants, their business is food, and certainly hospitals and schools would be in that category.
Right. Right now there is a law that if you're within 20 miles of a food waste facility and you generate, I believe it's over 106 tons a year, then you're mandated to separate out your food waste and have it composted. We're not quite in that range. And the tricky thing with the restaurants is they may not meet that. Like the small restaurants, they may not meet that. But I'm really looking at the Main Street downtown and all the restaurants there and constantly thinking of a way in which we can do some sort of milk run or something to collect the food waste. So it's just like most of their waste is probably food waste. So they would just need a tiny little something for garbage and then a bigger cart for their food waste, and we could get it out of the waste stream. Because we do have a problem in Connecticut. This is how recycling came about, was that we were generating too much waste. We were running out of landfill space, and then like 25 years ago or so, they built all these incinerators to handle the waste. But now those incinerators are getting old, and we're running up against the same problem again, where we are going to have a shortage of incineration space for regular garbage. So the state is really pushing municipalities to come up with ways to reduce their waste and recycle more.
And what happens with the incineration process? Is it like the anaerobic digester? Does it turn into energy then?
Yes.
Yes.
It does, yeah. But there's a lot of, because you're incinerating a lot of different stuff, there's a lot of pollution associated with it.
Sure.
And it's extremely expensive.
So it's really not a great solution.
No,
and
no,
landfills
it's not.
are no solution at all.
Correct. Although San Francisco, most of the country landfills, but here in Connecticut, we do not. We mostly incinerate.
Yeah, I believe we have the highest percentage.
We have the highest
in this country.
Which, depending on who you talk to, either it's really good or not so good.
Right.
So, we do.
And according to the EPA, incineration is preferred over landfilling.
Landfilling, correct, yes. They have a hierarchy, a solid waste hierarchy, and landfilling's at the bottom, and then incineration, and then recycling, and then source reduction. So source reduction is...
Yeah, so let's talk about source reduction. We don't have a lot of time left, but reduce, reuse, recycle. So how do we get at the reduction side?
So that's the most important thing that we want to get at, exactly. And how do we get at that? I mean, we have to really, and this is where the rethinking comes in. We're a culture that just is constantly buying, and everything we buy has packaging on it, and we're always changing our furniture or renovating something, so we really need to somehow, and I do believe it comes down to the finances. Like if people realize it does cost money to throw this away, then it will impact how they purchase things.
Right. So the kind of life cycle thing. I once, and I don't remember the name of the film, but there was a segment of it, an environmental film with a carpet manufacturer who worked into the price of the carpet, taking that carpet back when it was finished with its use, and then they would recycle it, but it was a part of the cost. Right.
And Connecticut actually is a leader with product stewardship issues, which is exactly what that is. We have that sort of system for paint, for mattresses, for thermostats.
Automotive batteries, right?
Oh yeah, we have a
That's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time. So those costs are included when the consumer buys it, and they cover the cost of recycling or
Right. Right.
at the end of the life, taking care of the product. So it's huge, and they're looking at many other
ways
items
to do
too.
that. Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, we got to close off the program by telling our listening audience once again that Racing to Zero is this great environmental film that is being shown for free here at Middlesex Community College on Monday night, April 3rd at 7 p.m. in Chapman Hall, which is the library with the big tower on the corner. But at 6:30, half an hour before, folks would be gathering just to have a casual conversation about this whole idea of reducing waste, and that's at in the pavilion, which is the glassed porch off the back of Founders looking out at the woods. It's beautiful. It's a great space to appreciate the environment from. And we hope you'll all come to the film. So thanks, Kim O'Rourke, and thanks,
Thank you.
Christine
Thank you.
Witkowski, and thanks to everybody out in the listening audience who's thinking about new ways to recycle right now and maybe reuse and reduce. This is Anna Wasescha. It's been Middlesex Moments radio show. I'm so happy you joined us today, and if you are so inclined, you can join us every Wednesday on WLIS WMRD.